Good morning and welcome to History of Interiors. Today we will be looking at the French Regency and Rococo styles. And this period is really not related to architecture in any way. It's only going to be seen in interior decoration. And it's a very feminine style, soft, pretty, all of that. It goes from 1715 to 1744, and it's characterized by its asymmetry, scrolling curves, gilding, and pastel color palette. Now, I would bet that many of you actually will recognize this style to some degree, even if you haven't termed it Rococo before. It is the style that the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast used throughout all of its animation. So even though there is that line that if it's not Baroque, don't fix it, they were actually using all of their interiors as the Rococo style. So it's a very romantic style that I think each of you will have had some type of interaction with. Okay, so just to give you some background information on the Regency and Rococo periods as a whole, um, King Louis XIV dies when Louis XV is too young to take over, and therefore the country is governed by a regent or a stand-in king until Louis reaches the age of 13, at which point he assumes the throne. And so that's how we kind of separate these two styles. While they are very similar in their looks, as we're going to see, the Regency period comes from literally when France was being ruled by a regent, and Louis XV will bring the Rococo style into fashion. All right, so some brief background on the Regency style. The Regency style is the transition between the Baroque and the Rococo. So we're going to see that all three of these very seamlessly fit together. And it basically just becomes a little bit more simplified each time, but it still includes a lot of the same elements. There's also a movement towards gracefulness and curvilinear lines, and that has partly to do with the idea of romanticism, which is infiltrating art and all sorts of cultural aspects. So you see it in literature, art, and then we also will see it in all of these interiors. There is a high demand for austerity and formality, lessened with political misfortunes of Louis XIV. So, like I said, Louis XIV was a pretty egotistical ruler. And so, therefore, these really high demands of a very formal type of space started to decrease a little bit, and that's where we're going to get the idea of a simplification. So therefore, with the growing appreciation for life and simpler pleasures, all of the styles are going to reflect that, and like I said, we're going to get a really soft and romantic end result from all of that shifting and shaping. So the main decorative features of the Regency style are the curved leg that is introduced, and we'll see this a little bit more. It kind of bows out, then bows back in. And then it also has a simpler ornament than the Baroque, and I want to be really clear with you on all of this up front. When I say simple, I mean in comparison to Baroque. None of these are going to be your modern, clean, minimalistic types of interiors. They're still going to have a lot of detail and a lot of things going on, but because we use such a softer color palette as well as not having everything elaborately carved, but rather simple and curved, that's what I mean when it gets to become simpler than the Baroque, not necessarily fully simple. We also see the scaling down of interiors and furniture. We're going to see for the first time that people are really starting to build furniture solely for comfort rather than trying to make a statement with it, and therefore it's going to become kind of an ergonomics thing, right? We want to make sure that everything is scaled to fit the human body. All right, so here you can see an ormolu commode, and if you recall, a commode is just a cabinet. This one features a curved frame and cabriole legs, which would have been part of those Regency styles. So the cabriole legs are the ones that bow out like this and then come back in and end in the little foot. This still looks heavy, so you can see the Baroque influence. We can still see the use of ormolu, which will remain popular throughout both the Regency and Rococo time periods. But it's really going to be the fact that this bows out in the front rather than being a straight line that really pulls this into the Regency style. All right, so now we are going to go into a brief history and overview of the Rococo style. This is the one that is in connection with the actual rule of Louis XV. So like I said before, it is a style of interior decoration. It's not going to have a connection to architecture in the way that we've seen some of the other styles be influential in both areas. The human dimensions are important, and everything was built for comfort. So going back to the idea of ergonomical furniture, you have smaller rooms, but you have more of them, and oftentimes these were hidden in a form of maze if the building got big enough, right? So you could easily get lost in these buildings because they wanted smaller, more intimate spaces, but they still wanted to have that large building footprint, so they just used more rooms that were smaller rather than having large rooms throughout the space. We also see a lot of female influence in this style. So you have in the arts, literature, and politics of the day, women are starting to get involved. Obviously, not to the scale that we see women being involved in politics or art or literature today, but we have some really key influential women using their voice in France at this time and really influencing the world around them in a way that we hadn't seen before. So that's pretty cool. You have Madame de Pompadour as well as Madame du Barry, who were both women of great culture and refinement and had a great amount of influence over the country as a whole. We also see the use of freehand curves, which we'll look into. It's a little easier to explain in a photograph. And as I mentioned before, since it's not connected with architecture, we also don't use any architectural orders during the Rococo period. All right, so now we're going to look at what makes those elements of a Rococo style all stick together. So first we're going to see a lot of wallpapers being imported, both hand-painted and flocked. They're going to have really elaborate window treatments. Fabrics reach a new height in this period, and so you're going to see that a lot in the window treatments. They're going to have layers upon layers of fabric and just beautiful, beautiful draperies. We also see simpler wall panels than we saw in the Baroque, though the wall panels are still very present throughout the space. The lowered dados becoming more of a chair rail height like we would see them today. And then we see coved ceilings and parquet floors still being quite popular. One of the main attributes of this style are the Savonier and Aubusson rugs, and these were really popular, incredibly expensive, luscious items that not everyone could have afforded. But these would sometimes be used on the floor, but oftentimes they were used as tapestries on the wall as well. So if you'll remember, obviously they don't have access to electricity and air conditioning at this point in time, nor do they have any form of heat other than fireplaces in the winter. And so by adding layers of textiles to the walls, they were able to add a form of insulation, which would either keep the space cool or warm, depending on the season. And then once again, there are no architectural orders being included in this style. So on this slide, you can see a lot of those elements that we just talked about. You have the curved furniture. You can really see the cabriole legs here. And then you can see the light wall paneling. So it's definitely still present, but not to the extreme that the Baroque took it. However, there is a feature in this piece that is not Rococo, and that is going to be this table right in the center. That is actually going to be in the French neoclassical style, which Napoleon will make popular shortly. But like I said, everything else, you can see the heavy use of curvilinear lines, which were incredibly popular during the Rococo period, as well as being able to identify several of those elements that we just spoke about for the last couple of slides. So the Rococo furniture often featured a serpentine or bomb fronts, which were meant to be emblematic of a woman's shape. There was also heavy enrichment to each of these pieces, whether that was in the form of carving, marquetry, paint, Chinese lacquer, or gilding. Each of these would have been decorative elements that were laid over whatever the piece was constructed out of. We also see new types of wood being introduced specifically for the Coromandel screens. So screens imported from China became incredibly popular at the time, and we're going to see a lot of influence of Chinese like design elements, and we're going to term this as chinoiserie. So that's what a lot of this style is based on. It's a loose interpretation of those Chinese styles. We also see popularity of marble tops for furniture pieces growing. And then we also see some new furniture pieces. So you've got the bureau, the voisée, the secrétaire, the chaise lounge, and then the burger and fauteuil chair, which we have seen those last two before. We're also going to see upholstery continue to be quite popular, and the main fabrics were a brocade, a chintz, which is basically a polished cotton, and then you see damask and needlepoint still being quite popular. So when we look at this space, we should quickly notice that most of these elements are not Rococo. So any of these really straight, rigid lines, they're not falling within the Rococo realm. However, the furniture in this really does showcase the Rococo style quite well. So if you look at this table that's kind of up against the wall here, as well as this chair in the front, you can see the cabriole legs, you can see all of the really elaborate details to each of these. And this here is a fauteuil chair, and we can tell that because it has the open arms. So that's going to be the difference between that burger chair and the fauteuil chair, is that the fauteuil chair is going to have an open arm. All right, so here you can see a very early Rococo serpentine chest. So you can see how it bows out if you try to follow the line that is on the top. And then you can also see the slight curving of the leg if you try to follow this line all the way down. And we can still see the ormolu being really heavily used. All of this gold is going to be in the ormolu fashion. And then we also see the use of a marble top. So like I said, this is a pretty early Rococo piece, but you can definitely still see all of those elements being used. So here you can see a bureau, which is basically like a desk of sorts, little working area. And on this one specifically, you can see that serpentine shape added to the front. It kind of wiggles back and forth there. And then you can also see the cabriole legs. Okay, so here you can see another bureau at the top left as well as a secretary behind it, or sorry, to the side of it. And you can notice the curved silhouette and how lightweight it looks in appearance. So the use of those cabriole, very thin, very classy legs that are super graceful serve to make that look more lightweight than it actually would have been. And then we can also see the use of marquetry to decorate all of these. Okay, so here you can see another commode with the ormolu covering it. It is also made use of the Chinese lacquer finish, so you can see that in the image that's on it, as well as with this reddish lacquer that has been used over most of it. And so this is what we mean when we talk about chinoiserie decoration. It's very much influenced by France's relationship with China. All right, so here you can see two really graceful Rococo armoires. And while we do still see some straight lines, obviously just for the purpose of what these pieces of furniture would have been, they had to be able to store things easily, and so to maintain their stability, they really had to be built this way, but we can still see all of these really curvilinear elements. You see the curve at the top, which is a freehand curve, and it does somewhat mimic a woman's upper lip. But it's all of those elements together that even though there are straight lines being used here, you can tell through the decoration of it that it really falls into the Rococo style. So on this slide, you can see a modern interpretation of a French Rococo fauteuil chair. And just like in the picture that we spoke about earlier, we can tell that this is a fauteuil chair because it has the open arm. So you can also see on this one the use of the cabriole leg as well as the really curvilinear shape overall. So the last thing that we are going to talk about today is the ornament that was used during the Rococo period. So first you have the cockleshell, and this is what the Rococo style really gets its name from. It's a type of shell, and they kind of played with that word and translated it into Rococo, and that shell motif is why we term this as Rococo today. You can also see that freehand curve, which you'll remember we just looked at on the armoire. And then it also uses a lot of floral motifs and gilding. Painted scenes made use of trompe-l'oeil, which is, it translates to fool the eye. And you'll see this mostly where doors are painted where there's not actually a door, but they wanted to make the space look more expansive, or windows painted where there's not really a window. So like I said, it's just a meaning of tricking the eye. We also see larger mirrors often placed across from each other to increase illumination. Musical motifs and literature motifs were popular, as well as hunting and fishing motifs. Love symbols such as a blazing torch, hearts, and Cupid become quite popular in this time as well. And then we also see oriental motifs, so think back to that chinoiserie that is quite popular. And then we can also see some pastoral scenes and objects, specifically from the Toile de Joie period. So here is an example of trompe l'oeil, and you'll probably notice that this is the exact opposite of the scenario that I just played out on the last slide. But if you follow this line here all the way down, you can tell that this is actually a set of two doors, but it is painted to look like it is an extension of the room. So you don't necessarily notice that it's doors unless you knew that those doors were placed there. And then through the Rococo style, we can see just how much of a powerhouse France is becoming at this time period. We see a lot of French influence, and we can see this in the style of other countries. So in Italy, you have the Venetian Rococo. In Spain, we're going to see the Churrigueresco. I'm sorry, I'll learn how to pronounce that before we have our lecture on it. In England, you can see the Queen Anne and early Georgian style, and then in America, we'll also dive into the Georgian style. So like I said, as the Catholic Church started to lose power, France began to gain it, taking that a little bit away from Italy at the time being. So we're going to see French styles become quite popular and also quite influential throughout history. So with that, we are done with today's lecture. Good luck with the rest of this module and have a great rest of your day.